Joe Burrow returned to practice for the Cincinnati Bengals, but is his return to play conditional on how the team performs and how much of a difference can he make? Let's answer those questions today.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow, one of your hosts of the Locked On Bengals podcast, joined today by Paul Dehner Jr., whose work you can find covering the Cincinnati Bengals at an elite level, just like Joe Flacco, but without the 20 years of memes, over at theathletic.com and on the Growler podcast. Paul Dehner Jr. with me today to talk about Joe Burrow's return. I want to get from you, Paul, like what the feel was in the building when that news happened on Monday, if it was as much of a surprise to you as it was for the rest of the world. And then we're going to get to the real stories, things we actually should be talking about for the second half of the season. But with Joe Burrow gifting us some news on a Monday out of the bye week, that's where we start today. Welcome back to everyone who makes Locked On Bengals their first listen, everyone who is an everyday listener out there. You can also check out the Growler for all of those additional Bengals news needs. And Paul, let's dive into it with Joe Burrow. Let's start with you're in the building, you're down at Paycor Stadium or maybe on your way into Paycor Stadium, and suddenly, we think the news of the day is Antoine Powell Ryland, perhaps, and this move to add depth, a guy that maybe can rush the passer a little bit. And then no, Joe Burrow practicing today. What was the ripple effect from the media perspective, from the in the building perspective down there?
I think there was kind of a little bit of a surprise probably to it. This was, to me, this was like the big reveal. Okay. It was, hey, guess what? We've been holding this secret. His rehab has been going really well. Like, we were kind of suggesting to you guys it was going well. You know, we kind of knew that things were going good, but guess how good? Joe's going to go practice today. To me, it was more, and he's going to talk. It's like, okay, finally we get to talk to Joe. Was kind of where my head went with it, more than the fact that, okay, he's practicing. Because here, no matter what, we know a little bit better now. But, when you hear the news, it's like, yeah, they could open the 21-day window. They could activate him. He could be inactive for the entire season, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But let's talk to Joe, because it's been 57 days since Jacksonville, and we have some thoughts and some questions that we all have for him in terms of what he thinks of what's going on. You never know, like, and we'll talk more about what happened yesterday, but you never know what direction it's going to go with Joe, because he can take it. He can strike the match. He can be a calming influence. He can be philosophical. We've seen it go many different directions, and specifically in a moment like that, that was where my head went, was I wonder what Joe's going to say today.
What direction do you think he took it out of those categories? Like we got crystal talk, we got some reflection on how he, the feelings that he went through and the loneliness of rehab a little bit. What was your takeaway from the 16 minutes of Burrow?
It was, I am focused on myself and my rehab. It was, this is not a day for big picture. It is not a day for me to lob grenades where they might eventually be lobbed, right? There's time for blame, I believe was kind of a bit of the phrasing. It was like this, not right now. This was about, I'm rehabbing. I'm focused on coming back and doing everything that I can to be part of this team, perhaps on Thanksgiving, whenever. Like, and there were plenty of opportunities to go philosophical about how things have gone wrong, to tell us exactly what he was thinking. We got the standard Joe Burrow long pauses that you get where he's contemplating kind of his thoughts on a question, which I always appreciate. You're at least getting thoughtful every time you talk to Joe, but you were getting those in regards to, should I go here? You could feel like it was a question where there's a lot of different things he could do. And it was very much more like, this is about the fact that I'm trying to come back and trying to help this team and being calming. And maybe at some point this year in 2025, before it's up, we'll go different directions. And I think that's certainly on the table. And I would actually expect it, judging by the history around here. But that was not what Monday was going to be. And so I think that was his very purposeful approach.
One thing that stood out to me as I listened to his comments was the we'll see how the next 2 weeks go. And it was,
Yeah.
well, we'll see how my toe responds to football activities, to more explosive movement, which I would assume he's done some of in his rehab. He said he's been running for a while now, or for a few weeks now, been lifting for a while now. And the test is not to do with throwing. He looks like he's throwing pretty comfortably. We've seen him soft tossing on the sideline. We know that toe, and he confirmed it. It's not like bearing a ton of force in a typical throwing movement. But as soon as you have to move, you got to push off that toe. Anyone who has toes knows what that feels like, what it feels like if things are torn on the bottom of your foot. But
Yeah.
the other aspect of it is like, we'll see how the team is doing in 2 weeks, and that gets to the aspect of like, is there a world where Joe Burrow recognizes we're not getting back in this thing. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to let this thing fully heal. I see what's happening with Brock Purdy, who didn't have the surgical repair. He's wearing a steel plate in his shoe. He still re-injured the thing. Now he's dealing with the fallout there. Or is it like, no, I'm playing. Screw you guys. I want to play football. I think I can play football. I'm going to play football. Do you think that his return is conditional on how the team plays?
No, I think his return is conditional on how he feels. I think this is about a guy feeling healthy. And if he feels healthy, he's playing football. Okay. Like, this is the guy where there's always something to play for. I mean, 4-8 last year, we're going to see who the future of this team is.
How'd that go?
They ripped off a bunch of wins. And I think they hope that they found some things, and he said some things, and the core of the team did kind of get built, whether it's good or not. The offense is still good.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm just saying mentally from his approach, right? It's gonna be, I want to play football, and if they're 3-8, there's a difference also between like, I might kind of come back early. It's not quite there, and all right, like, if you're cleared, if you're healthy, if you can play, this is your job. This is your position. There's always something. And so I think that's far more what it is than it's like, I mean, Joe Burrow's not man, we're out of it. I've seen this dude play when they're down 30 plus and
Mm-hmm.
he's getting pummeled with 0 blitzes. Okay. That's his attitude. That's who he is as a football player. That's who he is as a person. It's what's gotten him to this point. Some say he needs to stop being so much like that, but I don't think you're changing who he is. And until they're officially eliminated, I don't see a world where if he's healthy and cleared, he's like, nah, dog, I think this season's over. I don't see that as part of this equation. And if he feels good and he goes out and he's healthy and plays and has no issues, I think he finishes out the season regardless.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree, but I do have one follow-up question for you around his return to play. And does the organization have what it takes if they feel like they need to stand up to Joe Burrow and say, we're shutting you down? Well, we'll get to that topic here because I feel like Joe pretty much gets what he wants, and we'll see if this is any different in your eyes. We'll get to that topic here coming up next. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter and the nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. And this season, it's really important to reach out and check in with family, friends, or even yourself. Just like checking in on a teammate or reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a little while can lift your spirits. Reaching out for therapy can make a real difference too. And BetterHelp makes that first step easier by connecting you with a licensed therapist online wherever you are. Simply talking things through, even for a few minutes, can help clear your head, get you back on track. And it's not just for when things are falling apart. Therapy is about staying balanced and can be maintenance just to grow through the tough seasons. This month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. Listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon, because taking that step towards support might just leave you wondering, why didn't I do this sooner? All right, Paul, we have to talk about whether Mike Brown is going to intervene here. Do you think that Mike Brown is going to look at this thing? If they get to 3-8, they're thinking about Joe coming back for that Baltimore game on Thanksgiving. Well, what are the odds we're giving of someone organizationally intervening here?
Minimal. The only person from the organization intervening is a doctor. That's what's going to drive this conversation. This is Mike Brown wants to win football games no matter what. Like, that is never going to change. That's who they are organizational. It has dictated some of the way they've operated at the trade deadline over the years. It had an impact this year. They are never going to give up. They are never going to say they're not trying to win, and they're never going to do everything in their ability to make that happen. And that obviously includes Joe Burrow being out there as your quarterback if he can. If there was some risk of severe, like, re-injury that could be significant, that the doctors said, look, if you put him out here now, there's a chance. And I don't get the impression with this injury that that's necessarily the case, because he did have surgery and is back now. This is not like a high re-injury rate thing when you've gone to the lengths that they've gone to here. So if they come back and say, look, there's not some heightened re-injury risk here, he is healthy enough to go out there and play and move and do what he does, then the expectation is going to be that he's going to play, and the organization is going to support that. If there is any sense, though, that, like, there's a risk involved in this because of the toe or whatever, then I think the organization would have different feelings about it. This is going to be driven by the doctors, and those are the people that are going to be steering this, and the Bengals are going to be trying to win games no matter what. And I think that's Burrow's approach as well. So those probably do mesh in the middle. It's just going to be a matter of the doctor's opinions on that.
A lot of the feedback that I've noticed since, in the last 24 hours, essentially, since Joe was going to return to practice, was like, but why? Why risk it? Why put him in a position where this thing could get re-injured? So I'm curious, and if do you, is that a sense you've gotten from talking to people in the building that, like, since they went the surgical repair option, that the risk of re-injury is lower? Is that your own independent research? Because I haven't gotten there quite yet, but I've not gotten to or seen risk of re-injury for surgical intervention, turf toe injuries versus just return to play. But you think about prominent turf toe injuries in the NFL, guys that don't have surgery, AJ Green, of course, in Cincinnati, an example, Brock Purdy, the example this year, the risk of re-injury does always seem pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what I've heard from doctors that I talked to at the original outset.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is that, it now, again, if the doctors that they're going to be dealing with are going to be Joe's docs, like how they view it. And I think that's what they're going to be with, whatever that information is to them, in terms of, okay, there is a 10% higher risk of re-injury today compared to in 10 days against Buffalo, or this is going to be there the rest of the season, then I think the conversation is very different. That's what's going to be the driver here for me. The other side of this is, to me, and it's kind of the bigger picture, the sadness of this situation. I had a great Bengals fan sent me the Lieutenant Dan meme yesterday of New Year's and, like, the celebration, but Lieutenant Dan is just sitting there sad. Like, it's just, the thing is, this is not fixing the problem. The hot take from yesterday is the biggest news that came out of yesterday was that Trey Hendrickson is already doubtful for Sunday.
Yeah.
He is the Joe Burrow hero that needs to come flying in right now, not actual Joe Burrow. And that's nothing against Joe Burrow as a great quarterback. They currently have, since Joe Flacco got under center for the first time here, the number one offense in football by EPA. Like, they have that. They scored 80 points the last 2 weeks. They've needed anybody capable of making a stop, anybody that can make one play that you can win 38-35 instead of lose 47-42. Trey Hendrickson is that guy. He's the elite closer. That's his skill. The one thing that they've needed more than anything the last 2 weeks, he has not been able to provide because he hasn't been out there. And the fact that he is already doubtful. You know how they love to string these injury situations out and I don't know, we'll see, keep them guessing, no need to reveal anything. Already yeah, doubtful. After the trade deadline, everybody's can try to read between lines and whatever they want that to be, and you're never going to get a concrete answer on that. But the bottom line is they need Trey Hendrickson more. They don't need Joe Burrow right now because the offense is humming along just fine. You're always going to take Joe Burrow over Joe Flacco. But what Flacco is currently doing is leading the best offense in football. What else do you want? Is Burrow going to come back and they're going to score 100 points in 2 games? They're scoring at such a high clip that this is always going to be about the defense the rest of this season. And so it's cool. It's a nice distraction, but it's really the same conversation we had when Burrow was playing at an MVP level last year. Does it even matter? And the answer is it probably doesn't until something else changes. And that's sort of the sad aspect that hovers over all of this.
Yeah, the defense is still historically bad in many categories, which we didn't think it could get worse than last year. It is worse than last year. That's, I think, one of the stories for the rest of the way that we're going to talk about here. I do want to make one argument about why Joe Burrow could matter. This assumes that they can beat Pittsburgh, I think. I think you have to beat Pittsburgh for any of this to matter at all if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. But the Bengals offense, like you said, number 1 EPA offense in the last 4 weeks. They've scored 33, 38, and 42 points. They started to figure things out in that second half against Green Bay. The running game has come alive. The argument that I would make about why Joe Burrow matters is when you play defenses that are decent or better, I think it gets a little bit harder for the quarterback position to keep things going. It's going to get harder for them because a lot of the success has been in the run game, right? Flacco has been good. Don't get me wrong. I love to get romantic poetic about what Joe Flacco is doing on the other side of 40 late in his career. But run game, big part of this, especially against the Jets, that the underlying passing numbers aren't great, even though there has been a lot of production for Joe Flacco, and the defenses have been bad. So if big if, and one of the big conversation points for us the rest of the way is if this defense is not, in fact, a historically bad defense and is just a seasonally bad defense and finishes at 30th or 29th worst in these categories instead of 32nd and also 800th in the last 800 defenses in the last 25 years, then those margins matter on offense, right? Big if to get there, but having Joe Burrow running your offense obviously gives you a lower floor or a higher floor against some of the better defenses in the league.
They're better with Joe Burrow. That's not my argument here. I mean, they're clearly better, going to be better. I mean, his ability to create on 3rd and longs. I mean, you've seen that. The one thing you've seen is when they've needed that extra play when things break down. That's not going to be there. That's not really going to be part of Flacco's game. But he's made up for that in his ability to get rid of the ball quickly and find the playmakers and all of that stuff. You're right, though. When Christian Barmore and Milton Williams are blowing it up the middle on Flacco, there's going to be a different level of concern than you're having in what they've had in recent weeks against some of the teams that with the Jets and the Bears and things like that. There's no doubt. I'm not saying that it's not better. I'm just saying that, in terms of what it really means in the long run, I mean, you can, if you're on the fence, you can push it one more week, because of how well that they've played, where your comfort level with Joe Flacco, if we're talking about, look, there's 10 days between Thanksgiving and that game in Buffalo. Okay. Yeah. To me, that's probably what this conversation is about is, okay, it may be a touch early. I think in 10 days, you'll feel really good about Burrow coming back and be able to be himself. Cause that's it, right? Is he going to be able to do those things fully? And we all know early week Burrow, week 1 Burrow is, no one wants to see that. You want to know that he's going to be able to go out there and you hope, be confident to fully know that he can go out there and get into it. And if Flacco has been doing what he's been doing, and Baltimore would not be one of those defenses you're referring to. They're getting better, but they're getting better.
A lot better, yeah.
They've been better. I'm not saying they're not better, but they're, this is not, even New England, right?
Yeah.
My point is, like, I think that's probably what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're probably talking about that decision, because I think if it really is where they say it is, and everything goes along as well as it has, I think Buffalo feels like a realistic timetable, and where you feel really good probably about where he's at, or as good as you're going to, assuming they're still in it at that point. And I think you can be confident that Joe Flacco and this offense could go into Baltimore and win, because they have done more than enough to score points offensively against just about anybody that they've been up against. And so until I see differently, I think that could be something that affects it. And after that, yeah, you're always going to want Burrow over Flacco. That's, to me,
Right.
that's not necessarily the debate. It's about when you get into the little gray area there.
Yeah. I do keep wondering if the other shoe is going to drop on Joe Flacco at some point, because that's typically what's happened for
Yeah.
him throughout his stops. I think we started to see some of those cracks, but the big if is really on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's where we go to finish the show here, is like, how much should we be talking about who? Like, is it the players? Is it the coaches? Where should the conversation be? We'll finish that conversation here with Paul Dehner Jr. coming up next. We're brought to you today here on Locked On Bengals by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you can get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. You can order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times will keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, that next day delivery will be a game changer. The Part Finder tool and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters, and their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smooth. You can join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. We're also brought to you today by FanDuel, and the odds are changing for the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC North with a potential Joe Burrow return, and the NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on any of the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, you want to ride the hot hand, or you want to get some live bets in, you can combine them all into a same game parlay for a bigger playout, or just bet on the next fourth quarter comeback. If that's your thing, it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push that you're probably hoping Joe Burrow and these Cincinnati Bengals can do in December in the NFL. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Paul, we have spent a lot of time today talking about Joe Burrow and what matters about his return, and what's going to predict or predicate his return to play. But the bigger issue is that this is a historically bad defense. You've obviously covered this quite a bit this year. We've talked about it on Locked On Bengals as well. Everybody who's watched football can kind of tell. And sometimes it's hyperbole when you're just watching a game and you get that, man, this might be the worst defense I've ever seen. But this year is statistically backed up. Where should we be directing our focus as we talk about this topic? Obviously, the big coaching overhaul under Zach Taylor happens, and the feel at the time was like, okay, Zach, these are the changes you need to make this thing work. Okay, let's see how that goes. And so far, it's really not working. So when we talk about the stories that we should be focusing on, and the people we should be focusing on for this team as they try to find their way back to relevancy on a second quarterback contract for the first time maybe ever, can't seem to figure it out at that point. Where's your focus the rest of the season for this team?
I mean, at some point, it's the same single focus that has been since really this point last year. When are any of these young players going to get better, or do they just stink? And when do you cut bait on it? And I think we're at the point now with, a good majority of them, probably this year's rookie class notwithstanding, to cut bait time. They're not good. The players are bad. This is the problem. Okay. This is multiple coordinators. This is multiple systems. This is multiple theories on motivation. And these players have not gotten better. They cannot do what you want them to do, what any coordinator would want them to do. They should be able to go out there and show you some flashes. We're like not even seeing flashes with some of them. Okay. You have, we dubbed it the defining nine, right? These 9 top 100 picks in the rotation this year, all year. This was going to define the season. One has turned into something. DJ Turner. Cool. You got one. All right. That's the problem. That number needed to be in the 4 or 5 range. And that's before we get into some of the other guys that are just on the outside of that who you've brought in and now you've given major roles. I think this is about the players. This is about the people that pick the players. This is about everybody having their hand in the cookie jars. It's absolutely about the coaches too. This is a hand in the cookie jar situation. Everybody's in it. There's nobody that can have any sort of responsibility over this debacle happening on defense that doesn't have some part of the blame and have to have some of it on their shoulders. We're going to go back and look so much back on the decision to move into Barrett Carter from Logan Wilson for a long time this year, and to bring instability further into play, to lean further into a rookie class that already you were young, you were inexperienced, you needed anything, and to say, you know what, in the long run, it's going to pay off. We'll judge that the second half of the season. Does Barrett Carter suddenly start playing better? Does Demetrius Knight start playing better? Can Shamar Stewart look like anything that other than lost right now? Like I guess we shouldn't have been surprised that in training camp and in shorts that he was flashing all the time. The awareness that you want out of a player is not there right now. Will it show up? I don't know. That's the scouting report on Shamar Stewart was that's where the 4.5 sacks thing is kind of, we put it on this number, but it was really about awareness. It was about ability to see the play, make the play, and use your athletic ability to do that.
And
we just haven't seen that. Yeah. And finish. Right.
Because he's been around a couple plays and just, the missed tackle issues showed up.
You end up on the ground. Yeah. You end up, all that stuff. Like the bottom line is it's awareness of a bunch of young players and too much youth and inexperience out there and none of it getting better. Okay. So, all right. Well, if you made this submission, and who knows, I feel like you can make real arguments that if they would have held off to the bye week on the Logan Wilson, Barrett Carter thing, that Logan, one, would still be here, and 2, they might have won one of those 2 games. I don't know. It's not like Logan's been great. I'm not trying to make this some giant decision, but like you didn't need much. You need some stability out there. So there's coaching involved in that. And Zach Taylor is going to have to wear this defense, whether he likes it or not. Okay. Like that's not really my area of expertise. As he said, when I asked him about that, like, I get it. You are the offensive guy here. You're calling the plays. You have this offense that has been consistently good. You've dealt with adversity at your quarterback position, and you've had high-end play in both areas. Cool. You're the head coach. Like, you wear this defense too, and you don't usually get to hire a second defensive coordinator. Obviously, Al Golden is wearing a portion of this, and the blanket is all on top of Duke Tobin and company. So I don't think there's a way you can look at this defense and be like, oh, there's people who it's not really their fault. No, it's everyone's fault. Like, that's the only way you land at getting compared to the 1966 Giants and teams from the 20s. That's the only way you end
Lions.
up there. Yes, that's the only way you end up in, or even the 2018 Bengals.
Yeah.
Where you had to blow out Terrell Austin in his first year halfway through, and the head coach loses his job after that. Like that's the only way you end up in this spot, when it's everyone's fault. And so I don't know how you pick and choose amongst them because everybody's got some role in it.
When I have one quick funny question first, and then one final topic for us to hit here. When you see the ideas that Marvin was making all the calls that put the good defenses together in the past, because we know that it's not that funny, I guess, but we know the coaches are involved with picking players in
Yeah.
Cincinnati. And you get this regime change 2019, and they can't draft defensive players anymore. When you see people like, oh, they should bring back Marvin Lewis to be the GM. Once you get
Oh my
past the
God.
absurdity part of it, like, yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts when you see those takes?
I mean, is it is that bad, right? I wanted to say, is it this bad?
People,
Yes,
it's
I
out
guess
there.
it
I've
is.
seen it.
I mean, I've seen it too.
Yeah.
I can't help but laugh at the concept. Like, no, I mean, first of all, like, let's not act like the personnel decisions were just stellar. I mean, there was all kinds of issues happening there. You know, when did they draft well defensively? Then they had, you know, that we can talk about the 21-22 teams, which was the free agency microwave.
Yep.
And like I think that Duke Tobin and his crew don't probably get enough credit for what they did there. It's not, you don't just pay people and like it automatically hits. Like they hit at a crazy rate in free agency for multiple years and built a really nice thing. They
Unfortunately,
deserve credit.
that's not the world they play in the Cincinnati
It's
fan base.
not.
They don't get to do
And
that
they
very
when they've
often.
tried since then, it's gone really bad. And
Yeah.
so, you know, that's because it's not a world that anybody has that kind of hit rate. That was
Yeah.
a once in a lifetime hit rate for a 2-year run, which deserved credit, but that's not sustainable. And so you have to draft well, and they haven't. When have they really consistently drafted well on the defensive side of the ball? Mike Zimmer was here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you really have to go back there when you had that guy and that vision going for you. They've had hits here and there, certainly, and you've had some of that. But really, like, when Zim was here, they were rocking and rolling on defense and hitting on picks and drafting well. And then really, when he left, it just wasn't quite the same, and it really hasn't been quite the same. And I think that's not coincidental. Um, you know, in my opinion, that's just sort of I don't. Yeah, Marvin Lewis would not come in as a GM and fix any of this. Marvin's skill, he was really good at managing up and has a great relationship with Mike Brown, and that helped them get a lot of things going here.
Mm-hmm.
But being a personnel guy, nailing it would not have been where I would have pegged his strength. No.
So you heard it here first. Mike Zimmer for Bengals GM. That's my takeaway.
Hey, there you go. Zim for he's nearby. Just give him he could do GM from his ranch. Like he could work from the ranch in Kentucky, no problem. Just has to show up on draft night. That's it.
The last thing here, Paul, before I let you go. I have personally found it very hard to discuss the idea, and I know you've broached this topic, that the Bengals would consider changing anything in their personnel department with Duke Tobin, who's part of the family, is the only non-Brown to run the personnel department in the team's history that's had 3 different men in that role. 1999. What is different this year? Because you've talked about it, I think, for the first time that I can recall. We've talked about it more seriously, I think, than in the past, because when you have something that's historically bad, it kind of brings this stuff up. When you look at the recent, because like you guys said, I think on a recent Growler episode, this is the same front office that just took you to a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship game in back-to-back years with the rookie quarterback contract. And yeah, they had some top picks to help them get there, but they got you there. And now we're here. So how do you approach that discussion as someone who's been covering this team for a long time and kind of knows how they work?
It's hard. I think you have to do a lot of reading tea leaves, and you know, a lot of it just feels different. I think that the phrase that I keep going back to is it feels like there's more cracks in the foundation now than there ever have been around Duke Tobin. And that's not, I think, out of the ordinary for anybody who's in his type of role. But the Bengals are one of one, not one of 32. I think people that expect them to operate like other franchises, you just can't look at it that way. That said, what has happened in the last 2.5 years, there just feels like that it's never more pointed back to Duke. The other side of it is this goes back to the beginning of the Zach Taylor era, really. I mean, where for the first time when they introduced Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin was up there next to Mike Brown. This is for the first time. It's him. It's his guy. The first big move. And this has sort of been the Zach and Duke show. Well, when the Zach and Duke thing starts going as sideways as it currently is, well, he has to be in that mix more so than ever before. And, I think he was doing a large part in like keeping the franchise from falling apart when a lot of other things were not right in the past. But now you have this thing, and his face is and his job and what he's doing is just far more in the forefront of what's going wrong. And so we don't know like how far they're willing to go down. We know how embedded he is. We know what the trust level is. I mean, they view him as family. And we know the patience level here historically. I mean, it was just 2.5 years ago they were on top of the world from a personnel standpoint. They had the two best teams arguably in their history, and one that went to the Super Bowl, one went to the AFC Championship, and the roster was deep and all that. It's just everything's been wrong since then. So it's hard to judge. There's no precedent here. There's nothing to point to like, oh, well, we know how they operate in this situation. I more equate it to Marvin, in that at some point there will be a where, you can't just keep doing this. Marvin was here for 16 years, and there were sometimes you wondered if it would just be forever, and inevitably it wasn't. So I just feel like right now, I don't know what's going to happen this year at the end of the year. I know there's going to be a lot of answers that people are going to have to give, and he's more at the center of that conversation than ever. But it would be stunning to see him go. Like, that's all. That's what I come back to. Yes, I feel like there's more cracks than before because obviously, but it would just be stunning given who he is and the patience of the organization. And so we wait and we'll watch and we'll see how exactly it all goes down.
Yeah, the history makes it, and the lack of precedent. I've said the exact same thing. Like, not having a precedent, it will be unprecedented for the Bengals to make a move there. We have never seen them do it outside of bringing Duke in for the first time, which was not even a GM role initially. He's become the de facto, which is, I love how you talk about this, the de facto GM, which is a ridiculous title for anyone in the NFL to have. But it's not how it was originally. And he kind of grew into that role. So yeah, it would be unprecedented. That's why it's been such a struggle for me to wrap my head around. Like, how should we even talk about Duke? Like,
I think you talk about it. I think you have to talk about it. I don't think it makes sense to be like, oh yeah, it'll probably never happen. It could. Like, it's not. I mean, look, it's not like he has no responsibility to his bosses.
Yeah.
However long you've been here. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have responsibility over this roster. And look, we've seen them with Marvin go from, look, we just want to feel like we're a little younger, a little more on the cutting edge, a little different. And you have 3 AGMs lined up underneath that understand the organization, that have proven themselves. And whether it's Trey Brown, who's had interviews, or Steven Radicevic, who's run pro, or Mike Potts, who's been at the tip of the spear with college, like, they know the deal here. And that's such a big thing when we talk about what would have to happen, what it would have to be like. You need somebody to come in here that knows the deal and that understands what it is and that the family trusts. So if you were ever going to consider something like this, you would have to feel like you had something lined up that you feel like you can trust that person to enter the circle that really only one person's ever really entered totally. And so if you like, that makes it a little bit more, because that hasn't really previously existed. And so now that you see it a little bit more, perhaps you can start to see things. But again, the word is stunning if that were to happen. But yeah, I think you have to talk about it because of the also unprecedented nature of what's happening on the defensive side of the ball.
Unprecedented times lead to unprecedented conversations. You can find Paul Dehner's work at The Athletic, and the Growler podcast does a great job with all of his Bengals coverage. I'm sure if you are watching, you know him, but if you don't, you're missing out. Thanks, Paul, for the time. And until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day. and have a good one.